Hi, guys. Welcome to the podcast. As of me recording this, the podcast is currently unnamed. I'm sure I'm going to figure it out by the time I post it and you guys are listening. So I am excited to find out what that name is going to be. Before we get into it, I just want to give a little background about myself, why I'm even doing this. My name is Ray. I live in the United States. I just turned 28 years old a couple days ago, and it's kind of feeling like a new chapter in my life. I don't know if you guys know, but every 7 years, our bodies are completely new. All of the cells in our bodies are fully replaced in the span of about 7 years. So every 7 years, you're a whole new person, a whole new body, whole new cells. And it's kind of like marks, kind of the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. At least I'm feeling that right now. So I wanted to kind of do something new and do something different at the beginning of this cycle. I'm in my late 20s now. I think with 27, it's kind of halfway between 25 and 30, so you can still kind of argue, oh, I'm in my mid 20s. But 28, it's like, no, I'm in my late 20s. 30 is approaching fast. That's not scary or anything, but that's a big milestone, and I'm really feeling called to do something else with my life rather than just work my 9 to 5 and have my little hobbies and work out and stuff like that. So I wanted to make a podcast because I want to put myself out there. I feel like 28 years I've learned a lot, definitely. But I also know after 28 years that I don't know anything. There's so much more out there for me to learn. There's so much more growth to happen. And I kind of wanted to really spend this time in this new cycle learning new things and putting myself out there. So this podcast is me putting myself out there, and here on the podcast, we are going to learn new things. That's kind of the premise here, is that we're going to kind of pick a topic to learn about, to kind of go in depth about a little bit. This week today, we're going to talk about the extreme sport of freediving. So let's get right into it. Let's not waste any time. Let's talk about freediving. And this is like freediving out in the ocean, going down into the depths, holding your breath, no equipment, no assistance, that kind of stuff. So I watched the documentary called The Deepest Breath. It's on Netflix. And if you haven't seen it, no worries. You don't have to have seen it. We're not going to talk about the documentary itself. I'm more just using that as a vehicle to pull information out of. We're going to talk about the content and some of the interesting things that came out of it. And then I did some more research myself. So no worries if you haven't seen the documentary. No need to. You just need to kick back, listen, hang out. I'm going to try and be a little bit funny as well and entertaining. It's just very casual. We'll see. Let me know afterwards. Give me some feedback. Let me know if I'm funny or not. So I chose this documentary especially first. I chose it first because I love the ocean. I have grown up on a coast. I've grown up going to the beach every single summer. And whenever we went to the beach, I was always in the water. As long as I possibly could, I would be in the ocean, splashing around in the waves, diving under the waves, holding my breath, swimming around. And I absolutely loved it. There's just something about the ocean, the water, just how vast and big and beautiful it is that always just really captivated me. And I've always been a fish. Even when I took swimming lessons since I was young. I was really scared of the water at first, but I remember having this big breakthrough when I was young, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I was terrified to even jump off of the steps, into my swim instructor's arms. I literally made her come stand right in front of me. I could touch her forearms and then I would jump to her. And by the end of that summer, I could fully, all by myself, jump off the side, 2 or 3 feet away from the edge, and then swim back toward the steps. And ever since then, I was like, I love this. I love swimming. I love being in the water. When I'm in pools, I used to go I would swim like underneath down to the bottom and like writhe around and pretend I was a mermaid and be like blowing bubbles up to the surface. And I think there's just something so peaceful and calm and serene when you're under the water that, I mean, you're kind of in a different world, like going from breathing air to holding your breath underwater, being in water, especially feeling that pressure on you. I always thought that there was something sort of like nice and comforting about it. So I can see the appeal of freediving and kind of going through that experience at a much more extreme level and going so far underneath the water and just, again, being in a whole different world. I would honestly love to do that myself. I sort of recently, like a couple years ago, went to, there's like some reefs near where I live. I went with a friend and we just went kind of snorkeling. And you could kind of dive down. There was kelp, like thick, 2 foot thick, several like dozen feet tall kelp that was coming up from the bottom. There were rocks, there were fish. It was really cool to swim around in all of that. And I would love to do that again somewhere, especially somewhere beautiful and tropical and clear and wonderful. So that's, but I think that's as far as I would want to go in terms of free diving, maybe a couple dozen feet, couple dozen meters underneath, not a couple dozen meters, couple dozen feet underneath, looking around at some cool stuff. But this stuff here, the sport of free diving is wild. It's insane. I knew that to some degree, just kind of conceptually, oh yeah, you're diving hundreds of feet under the water. Wow, that must be really tough. But I didn't know how tough it is, and what all the dangers are, crazy, crazy dangers, just the stuff mentally that you have to go through in order to be able to do this. So yeah, let's talk about that. So in this documentary, The Deepest Breath, we are following world record holders and world record chasers. And we're actually following women. So this is about the women's record for deepest free dive in the ocean. For a long, long time, the record was held by a woman named Natalia Molchanova. She had over 40 freediving records. Overall, she had gone the deepest out of any woman on Earth, which is 100 meters underneath the water, which for all of us here in the US, that is 300 feet. It's actually a little more than that, but for just ease of communication, we're just going to translate 1 meter to 3 feet. But still, 300 feet is a lot. Like, I know that you think, oh, like something is 300 feet away. That doesn't sound like too much, but I think just the perspective of something horizontally far away versus something vertically far away is crazy. It's like a completely different perspective. I mean, 300 feet is 30 stories, a 30-story building. Imagine swimming the length of a 30-story building down and then having to go back up to the top. That is wild. So Natalia Molchanova held that record, and Alessia Zecchini broke that record throughout the course of this documentary. So we're kind of following her story and the story of a man named Steve, who ended up being her coach later on in life when she was going to break these records. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process of freediving and what these people go through in terms of the preparation, in terms of actually during the free dive, what they're doing, what's going on, and then kind of the aftermath and the dangers of it as well. So preparation, I mean, obviously you have to spend years and years of training your breath control, training your body control, training your mind and your emotional control. Alessia practiced for years in the pool, going forward and backward around the length of a pool, seeing how many meters you can swim just completely under the water, holding your breath. again, that's horizontal. So you're not worried about depth, you're not worried about pressure, you're just worried about yourself swimming. And of course, she did really, really well. She was sort of like a prodigy, at least I would say, in terms of that. She had a lot of really quick progress as she was growing up. And so that's kind of how you start. I know there's like specific ways to practice this breathing. There's a way to like suck in and compress air in your lungs so that you are holding more air. Your like lung capacity is increased just because you're able to pack so much air into your chest. And then that obviously helps you hold your breath for longer. And I know that there's a lot to do with like, just muscle relaxation. You have to be able to keep your heart rate down, because if your heart rate goes, if your body's moving like that, then you're going to use more oxygen. So you have to be able to stay calm while you're doing this as well. So there's lots of training, lots of preparation in order to even get up to the point where you can like attempt these world records, to attempt to go 30, 50, 100 meters underwater. And obviously, you build up to that as well. So all of this, years and years of practice to be able to even go after these world records. Now, when you're actually doing these dives, when you're attempting it, you're out there kind of free floating in the middle of the ocean. Obviously, you got to find some place that's super deep and also accessible. So some of the locations that they went in this documentary, they were in the Bahamas for one. That was the vertical blue competition. That's like the largest competition in the world for freediving, or one of them, I suppose. There's a place called the Blue Hole in Dahab, Egypt. That is where a lot of the documentary took place. It's basically like right off the coast of Egypt in Dahab, and then there's shallow parts, and then there's a part where it just goes deep. It just goes down. There's a huge coral reef under there. There's a landmark called the Arch, which we'll talk about that later in the podcast. But that's like basically like a tunnel, a big tunnel made out of reef underneath the water that you can swim under. Again, we'll go into that more later because that was a pretty interesting part of the part of the documentary, excuse me. Okay, so you're at one of these locations, you're ready to do this free dive, you're there with a whole bunch of people. You have safeties, which are the people who are kind of there to make sure that you get out okay. Obviously, there's the other free divers there who are diving or competing. You have judges, so the judges are watching your dive. They just stay at the surface, so I think they're kind of watching what you do at the beginning, watching what you do at the end, listening to whoever's kind of like supervising the dive. There's someone kind of calling out, oh, they're this many meters down. Oh, they touched the bottom. Oh, they're coming back up. First safety going down, second safety going down. So that person is kind of supervising everything, making sure everything is going well. So there's a lot that goes into it, again, to make sure that A, it can even be done, and B, that it can be done safely. So in the documentary, they had these big, it looks like a raft. I'm pretty sure it's not anchored down to anything. I think it just kind of floats there. It looks like a raft, and it has this big like pulley system on it and a rope that goes down with a weight. And so before you do your dive, you have to kind of call your shot. You have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how many feet down I'm going to go. And then they adjust the rope to be that many feet down, meters down, whatever. There's little tags down there that are attached to the bottom of the little weight. So in order to prove that you made it all the way down there, you have to dive all the way down, grab a tag, and then come back up. So that's a lot. You can't just go down and be like, oh, I think I'm gonna do 100 meters. Oh, well, I only got to 98. Oh, well, whatever. No, you kind of have to go all the way down to the bottom, and then you're really hoping and praying that you make your way all the way back up. And sometimes people don't. And we'll talk about that in a second. It's called blacking out. But anyways, so, your dive starts, they start your timing, you're lying there on the surface, and then you take a breath, and then you turn and go. And people, the safeties, which are, again, the people, there's like at least 2 to 3, maybe more people who are watching and making sure that you make it down, or you make it back up, I guess. But they don't see you going down. After you pass maybe about 20, 30 meters, maybe about 100 feet, you are on your own. Nobody else is going down that far with you. And there's there can't be anyone at the bottom sitting there like waiting for you and watching you, right? That would be insane because someone else would have to be down there. There's a little camera on the weight. Oh, and I forgot, okay. So there are scuba divers that can be out there. They had scuba divers like kind of taking some video and stuff as you were going and watching. They can be there to keep eyes on you, but a scuba diver cannot help a free diver if something's going wrong. Because if something is going wrong, that free diver needs to get to the surface quickly. And with scuba, you can't. You have to go slowly and you have to depressurize. So if you're in scuba gear and you're watching someone free dive and you guys are both like 100 feet down and something goes wrong, there's not anything that you can do as a scuba diver. You are completely helpless. You can just, I don't even want to think about it. It's just crazy. So there can be scuba divers to kind of watch and keep an eye on things, but they can't actually help you if something goes wrong. So again, you are on your own for 2/3 of the entire dive. You're going down into the water, and it gets dark fast. The quicker you're away from the sun and the surface, the darker it gets. I'm sure the colder it gets, the more quiet it gets, and the scarier it gets. There was a quote from Alessia in the documentary. She said that once you get down there, you see things that don't exist. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being 300 feet below the surface of the water, away from air, away from sunlight, away from people, all on your own, nothing to guide you except for a tiny little rope that you are attached to. You're in the complete darkness and you're seeing stuff? Like, I can't even imagine what you would be seeing. What are you seeing? Monsters? Are you seeing your own nightmares? Are you seeing people from your past? Are you seeing sharks swimming by? Are you seeing giant underwater, like a megalodon or a kraken or something like that? Is it just like whatever the worst thing you can imagine? I mean, that's what I would guess. She didn't go into any detail, but I feel like that's just crazy. That's just crazy to see things that don't exist and to have enough mental and emotional fortitude to see those and be like, that's not real. I can't freak out. If something goes wrong, I'm dead down here. I have a job to do. Grab the tag, go back up. Right? Like, that's hats off to them. Big claps. That's crazy. Okay. So they were describing the process of diving. This is something that I didn't really think about until I watched it, but she said that after about 30 meters, so after the first 100 feet, it gets easy because there is enough, the weight of yourself and the pressure of the water is enough that you are going down easy. She described it like flying, basically. I would say maybe kind of like a slow, controlled fall where you don't have to put any effort in. Your body is just going. You're just going down as far as you want. And the water itself is doing the work. You don't have to do any work going down, but you do have to do the work coming back up. So once you hit the bottom, not the bottom of the ocean, but the bottom of however deep you're going, you see the little weight, you get your little tag, and you start swimming back up. That's the hard part. The easy part was going down. The hard part is coming up, because you are fighting against the pressure of hundreds of feet of water crushing down on you. They described it as swimming against a current. So think about like if you're in a river and you're trying to swim upriver, coming back up from a free dive is basically like swimming upriver. So now your muscles are working, you're exerting effort, your heart rate is increasing, meaning you're gonna burn through your oxygen faster. And I'm sure there's a little bit of that mental panic that you're fighting that's like, am I going to get to the surface? I got to get to the surface. Am I going to run out of air? You know, you're fighting through all of that in your head as you're coming back up. Again, still alone. And for Alessia, alone for about 200 feet until you see the first safety. So the first safety is usually about 30 to 40 meters deep, 100 to a little over 100 feet deep. There's someone who is a free diver themselves who can hold their breath long enough to go down there, kind of wait a second for you, make sure that you're there, make sure you're coming back up, and then be able to kind of swim up with you there in case anything happens. And then there's at least one or two other safeties that kind of come down for the last, I'm sure, like 5 to 10 meters coming back up. And you kind of think that like once you're at that point that it's easy, right? Like you're so close to the surface, these people are here, you can see the light, you're almost done, just that last little push. However, 99% of all freediving accidents happen in the last 10 meters, so in the last 30 feet. People will do what they call a blackout. So basically, you're running out of air. Your brain shuts down your body in order to keep your brain alive as long as possible. So, and I mean, in the documentary, you could literally watch these people. They're going up, they're swimming, they're reaching, and then they just kind of stop and they slow down and they start to kind of float, and they're not kicking, they're not moving. These safeties will give them like a couple of seconds, realize, oh shit, this is bad. They'll kind of grab their head, grab their neck, close off the airways, and then just swim them back up to the surface. And after someone blacks out, you have like 1 to 2 minutes to get them up, get them air, get them oxygen before brain damage starts to happen. So they'll swim them up the last, like 10, 20 feet, however much they need to, get them up into the air. You could see people, like the couple of times it happened in the documentary, you could see people coming up, they were kind of like seasoned, their eyes were open, but you could tell that there wasn't anything there, they weren't seeing anything, and it would take them a couple of seconds to kind of come back to their bodies. They'd get them up on the little raft, they'd start giving them like oxygen from a tank to kind of get air back into their bodies. So that's pretty scary. And I was thinking about why would this happen, in the last 10 meters, in the last 30 feet, when you're so close to the edge. You'd think, oh, let me just push a little bit, I'm almost there, let me give it that last bit of effort to get up to the top, make my dive, I get a white card in the judges, which is a positive, that means you're good to go. But maybe it's a sort of like subconscious survival thing, because when you're deep underneath the water, on some level, if I don't get back to the surface, I'm gonna die. So your brain and your body will do whatever it needs to do and put yourself in a state of mind and in a physical state to be able to get up to the surface so that you can survive, right? That's what we're all trying to do, is survive and keep going and see the next day. So once you get to the point where you are close to the surface and you see the safety here and you see the other two safeties there, and you're close and you're almost there, I feel like there's maybe some sort of subconscious switch that flips when your psyche kind of knows, I'm safe now, right? Like if something happens, these people are here, they're going to get me to the surface, I'm going to survive, so my body does not have the physical capacity to do this anymore. my body's done, my lungs are done, my brain is done, we're gonna survive. Let's just shut off and do what we need to survive and be healthy. Because if someone wasn't there, if you didn't have safeties, I bet you that you could make it to the surface. And maybe that's me just completely talking out of my butt and I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's like a crazy statement to make if you're an actual freediver. But I feel like just in terms of survival, if you needed to, you could go that last 10 meters, you could go that last 30 feet to make it to the surface to survive. But because you don't have to, technically, even though you want to, even though you're in competition, even though it's your dream to hit this world record, something in your body, something in your brain knows you're going to survive and will shut off to, keep itself safe and healthy. I don't know. That's just my guess. It's all pretty crazy. So blackouts are probably the most prominent and immediate danger when you're freediving. There's also something called lung squeeze, which is when the pressure of the water, coming down on you when you're diving deep, puts so much pressure on your lungs that you will actually pop blood vessels in your lungs and bleed into your lungs. So this comes from, this shows itself as coughing up blood. Too many injuries like this can cause damage and scar tissue in your lungs. And I'm pretty sure they said that makes it easier for this stuff to happen again if you already have damage and already have a scar tissue. So lung damage and brain damage are the two worst offenders in terms of dangers when you are freediving. There's also risk of nitrogen narcosis. So I believe that just happens mainly at greater depths, but this is can impair your cognitive function. Similar, like the oxygen deprivation, and then maybe just an increase in nitrogen in your lungs and in your body. It's similar to alcohol intoxication. So it can impair your judgment and lead to poor decision making. And I don't know about you, but the risk of being basically a facsimile of drunk underneath the water, hundreds of feet underneath the water, does not seem like a good mix to me. Okay, now we'll talk about the arch, because this was kind of the last part of the documentary. So we followed Alessia. She actually did beat the world record, set a new world record of 103 meters underneath the water. So that's 309 feet. So about 310 feet, diving down, coming back up. And her her next big achievement she wanted to do was the arch. So the arch is at the Blue Hole in Egypt. It's been described as an underwater cathedral. It's this beautiful, huge, big tunnel underneath the water down in this blue hole. It is one of the most dangerous places to freedive because there's a period of time where there is something else between you and the surface of the water. There is an entire reef between you and the surface of the water. So you can't just say to yourself, oh, I need to go up now. You have to keep going, get out from under the arch, and then go up. And that's not the only thing that's there. There's other reef around it. So it's not just about getting through the arch. It's about getting through the arch, and then from there also knowing where you need to go in order to get up to the surface. Because especially down there that deep under the water, you're gonna kind of get lost too, right? Especially if you're far enough from the surface that you can't really see exactly where the light is coming from, you could maybe think you're swimming up and be swimming horizontally, diagonally, maybe even straight down, maybe in the opposite direction of where you want to go. And that is actually what happened to Alessia when she was doing this arch swim. So her and her coach, Steve, spent tons and tons of time doing practice tests, timing her for how long it takes her to swim down, how long it takes her to swim across, and how long it takes her to swim up. So everyone was stationed and knew exactly what needed to happen. She had to swim 52 meters down into the blue hole, which is, again, a little over 150 feet, 15 stories, a 15-story building. That's how far down she's swimming. She then has to swim 30 meters across. Again, that's 90-something feet that you're swimming horizontally underwater. That's like almost a football field. Football fields are in feet, right? I'm gonna go with it. That's almost a football field that you have to swim by yourself underneath the water horizontally, and then you go back up another 52 meters. So they were timing it out, saying this is how long it's going to take her to go down, go across. They did have a couple of scuba divers in the water, in the arch, to kind of keep eyes on her, watch her go. Again, those scuba divers, they can't do anything. They're just there to watch. They're just there to look so that if something happens, they can go back up and say, this is what happened, you know? But they can't help these divers. They can't do anything. That would be the last person that I would want to be in all of this. I would rather be the one going down than the one sitting there in a scuba scoot watching this happen. So Alessia, she goes for the dive, goes across. They're timing her. They have a little GoPro on her so you can see, like us as the audience, we can see what it looks like. And again, it's just dark and blue, and you can see the shadows of the reef and some of the shapes and stuff, and a little bit of her like chin because you're kind of looking up, and that's it. And you know that she's in there. That's all she's looking at too. She's going across. She's gonna be like looking out for Steve, her coach, who's supposed to be on the other side. He's gonna guide her to the rope to go back up. As it happened, she was a little bit early. She was like 10 seconds early to get out through the arch and need to go back up. And then Steve, for whatever reason, he wanted to wait an extra like 10, 20 seconds before going down to meet her. So she was early and he was late, which means that she got out from under the arch, didn't see Steve, and didn't see the rope, was not able to go back up, had no idea where she was, and she just kept swimming along the reef. And I mean, we're seeing it from the perspective of the woman in the scuba suit. So we can see her just swimming. Thankfully, eventually you see Steve come into the picture. He did catch up, he did find her and start to guide her back towards the top. But, and this is really sad, it wasn't enough for both of them to survive. So Steve was able to get her up to the top, put her on her back. She was blacked out. He put her on her back in a position where she could float and survive, and he didn't make it. He came up, he blacked out as well. He came up face down. It took a couple of moments for Alessia to come out of her blackout and be able to see what was going on and understand what was going on. And unfortunately, by then, it was too late for Steve. He gave his life to save hers. They were also in a relationship at the time, which is, again, that's just heartbreaking. You can hear it in my voice now, I was like sobbing when this happened. In the documentary, I didn't think I was that emotionally invested, but I guess I was. But I mean, he was known as one of the best safety divers in the world. He had saved someone else's life years before in a really bad accident. So yeah, they created, his name was Steve Keenan. After that, they created the Keenan Award, which was given to safeties who go like above and beyond to help their divers. I think that's, you know, a really great way to kind of eulogize him and have his legacy keep on like that. Alessia, again, she survived. She still holds the world record for deepest women's dive at 107 meters, so a little bit further than she went even in this documentary. And I mean, she's still here, she's still going. Of course, the sport of freediving is still alive and kicking. I will not be undertaking it myself. You know, like I said, if there's like a coral reefs, if I'm out somewhere beautiful, I'd love to go snorkeling, go under the water, see some cool stuff. But yeah, I do think that it'd be really fun and really interesting to learn how to hold my breath for as long as these guys are doing, because it's like they're holding their breath for upwards of 5 minutes for all of these dives. And I looked it up. The average human, it said that the average amount of time that like a human could hold their breath, you know, like us, the general public, can hold our breath is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds comfortably. I don't think that's true. I think that's a very high number for what we could do. Like, I've tried it and I'm 30 seconds in, I'm dying. And maybe that's just because like we don't have the proper training. I haven't practiced it. You know, I'm sure if I did and practiced, then I'd be able to get up higher and higher. But I feel like that's just a really good skill to have, is to be able to hold your breath for a good long amount of time. Because, yeah, I mean, you never know when you might need it. And I think that's also just a way to kind of push your body and learn a new skill and, you know, give yourself a challenge to achieve. So, yeah. You guys, this was really fun. I really enjoyed watching this documentary and learning more about freediving. I hope you guys learned something too. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please give me a 5-star review. And at the end of next week's podcast, I will shout out any people who left 5-star reviews. If you're not listening on iTunes, or even if you are, I would still love to get your feedback. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find the podcast on Instagram. I'm going to leave the handle in the description because, again, I haven't named it yet, so I don't know what the Instagram is going to be. But find me there. I'm going to be keeping you guys updated. I'm planning on doing this podcast once a week, and every week it's going to be like a new topic, probably a new documentary as well. Because I feel like that's a really easy way to get a lot of good knowledge, is to just sit and watch a documentary and then do a little extra research beyond that. So I don't know what next week's is yet. I'm going to decide that soon. But yeah, this is really great, you guys. Again, my name is Ray. I will name the podcast by the time this comes out. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Ciao.